Hello there, and welcome to PK Sleep Science. Tonight, we gently drift into one of the most fascinating and quietly powerful relationships in human history, the bond between people and medicinal plants. Long before laboratories, before pharmacies, before medicine came in bottles and tablets, healing often began in the natural world. In the texture of bark, in the silence of roots, in the softness of leaves, and the hidden strength of seeds, people discovered something remarkable. Substances that could ease pain, calm the mind, fight illness, and sometimes even change the course of history itself. What makes this story so deeply intriguing is that plants were never created to heal us. In fact, many of their most powerful compounds evolved for entirely different reasons. Plants have spent millions of years learning how to survive, how to defend themselves, how to endure sunlight, drought, insects, and disease. And in doing so, they created chemistry that just happens to interact with the human body in extraordinary ways. Again and again, humans learned to recognize these hidden signals, to test them, to remember them, and slowly, to turn them into remedies. And tonight, as you begin to relax, as your breathing slows, and your thoughts start to soften, we'll explore this quiet world together. If you enjoy these peaceful journeys, you can always support the channel by liking or subscribing. It helps others find their way here, one calm mind at a time. But for now, there's nothing you need to do. Just let your shoulders drop, let your eyes grow heavy, and allow your thoughts to drift. Because this story begins very simply. Many of humanity's earliest medicines were plants. Long before chemistry existed as a science, people were already reading nature like a vast, living pharmacy. A bitter bark might reduce fever. A cool leaf might soothe the skin. A fragrant seed might settle the stomach after a heavy meal. Across continents that had never met, across cultures separated by oceans and mountains, people kept arriving at the same quiet realization that the plant world was filled with hidden power. And that realization changed everything. Medicine did not begin in clean rooms under bright lights. It began beside fires, along riverbanks, in forests, in valleys, and in small gardens carefully observed through the passing seasons. Each remedy was a mixture of curiosity, patience, and courage. Someone had to taste, someone in others. They exist alongside modern hospitals, trusted for certain conditions because generations have seen them work. A grandmother prepares ginger for nausea. A family reaches for peppermint or chamomile. A healer carefully selects bark or roots for fever. These are not isolated habits. They are part of a global pattern, repeated across cultures, across time. And behind every plant remedy lies something even more remarkable. A body of knowledge built not in laboratories, but through careful observation, memory, and lived experience, refined slowly. Across centuries, because people paid attention, they noticed what helped, what harmed, what worked, and what did not. And through that attention, something powerful emerged, an understanding that nature itself holds answers. But those answers are never obvious. They are hidden, subtle, and often surprising. Sometimes, a simple tree can change everything. For centuries, people knew that the bark of certain trees could reduce pain and fever. They didn't know why. They didn't understand molecules or chemistry. They only knew that relief was there. Later, science would follow that clue. And from that quiet observation, one of the world's most familiar medicines would eventually emerge. This is what makes medicinal plants so fascinating, not just the results, but the journey. A journey that begins in nature, passes through human curiosity, and ends in discovery. Again and again, the same pattern appears. A plant, unnoticed or ordinary, reveals something extraordinary. A flower in a garden becomes part of cancer treatment. A root in the soil becomes a powerful remedy. A leaf becomes relief. And often, the appearance of the plant tells you nothing. It may look simple, even delicate, but inside, it carries chemistry shaped by survival, pressure, and time. That contrast is what makes this world feel almost magical. Something quiet becoming powerful, something ordinary becoming essential. And as you continue to relax, drifting deeper into this calm space, you may begin to notice something else. The story of medicinal plants is not just about science. It's about connection between humans and nature, between observation and understanding, between the visible world and the invisible chemistry beneath it. And the deeper you go into this story, the more that connection begins to feel almost endless, because the more we learn, the more we realize that nature has always been speaking, softly, patiently, quietly, waiting for us to listen. And as this quiet story continues, it begins to reveal something even more surprising. Some of the most important medicines in human history did not begin in laboratories at all. They began with simple observations, repeated over time until patterns started to appear. A tree that eased pain, a flower that affected the body in unexpected ways, a root that changed how illness was experienced. One of the most well-known examples begins with something very ordinary, a tree growing near water. For generations, people noticed that its bark could reduce pain and fever. They didn't know about chemical structures or biological pathways. They only knew it worked. Much later, scientists followed that clue. And from that discovery came one of the most widely used pain-relieving medicines in the world. What makes that journey so remarkable is not just the outcome, it's the path itself, from a quiet riverside tree to a global medicine cabinet, from observation to transformation. And this pattern repeats again and again. Sometimes, the most delicate plants hold the most powerful secrets. A small flowering plant, easily overlooked, once knowledge became so detailed, so careful, and so precise. It was never enough to know which plant to use. You had to know how much, when, how it was prepared, and which part of the plant held the effect. Because a leaf might behave differently from a root. A bark might carry stronger compounds than a flower. And even within the same plant, chemistry can vary. That level of attention required patience, it required memory, and it required respect. Because nature does not label its medicines, it simply produces them and leaves it to us to understand. There is something almost poetic about that. A silent world filled with solutions, but no instructions, only patterns waiting to be noticed. And over time, humans became very good at noticing. They learned that plants could not run, could not hide, could not escape danger. So instead, they evolved something else. Chemistry, invisible defenses built into their very structure. Some compounds taste bitter to discourage animals from eating them. Others interfere with digestion or attack microbes. Some affect muscles, some affect the mind, and some affect the deepest systems of the body itself. From the plant's perspective, these are tools for survival. But from our perspective, they can become something entirely different, medicine. And this is where the story becomes even more fascinating. Because when humans began using medicinal plants, we were not discovering something new. We were stepping into an ancient system, already in motion, a kind of biochemical language, written over millions of years. Each plant carrying its own message, each leaf its own formula, each root its own story. And slowly, carefully, humans began to translate that language, not perfectly, not all at once, but piece by piece, a taste remembered, a result observed, a lesson passed on. And through that process, knowledge grew. Across continents, across generations, across entire civilizations. In some places, that knowledge became written. In others, it remained spoken, carried through tradition. But everywhere, the pattern was the same: observation, experience, and memory. And what makes this so remarkable is how often different cultures arrived at similar conclusions. Plants that were used for digestion, plants used for pain, plants used for calming the body. Again and again, the same ideas appeared in different parts of the world, as if nature was offering the same quiet hints to anyone willing to pay attention. And now, as you continue to relax, letting your thoughts drift more slowly, you might begin to feel the rhythm of this story, a pattern that repeats. Nature creates, humans observe. Knowledge grows, and through that cycle, something powerful emerges, a connection between the natural world and human well-being, a connection that has existed for thousands of years and is still unfolding even now. Because despite everything we've discovered, there are still countless plants, countless compounds, and countless possibilities yet to be understood, which means this story is not finished. In many ways, it is only just beginning. Quietly, without urgency, without pause, the cycle continues beneath everything we notice and everything we forget to notice. A leaf falls, and it does not disappear. It settles gently onto the soil, joining countless others that came before it. Over time, it softens, darkens, and slowly becomes part of the earth again. Within that transformation, tiny organisms begin their work, breaking it down piece by piece, turning what was once living into nourishment for something new. Nothing is wasted. In that sense, endings are not truly endings at all. They are transitions. One form loosens its hold so another can begin. The same pattern unfolds everywhere. In forests, where fallen trees become homes for insects, fungi, and moss. In oceans, where the remains of large creatures sink slowly into the deep, feeding entire ecosystems in the darkness below. Even in the air, where particles drift, settle, and rejoin the wider system in ways we rarely stop to consider. Life is not a straight line. It is a circle, always bending back into itself. And yet, what makes this even more remarkable is how quietly it happens. There is no announcement when something becomes something else, no clear moment where one stage ends and the next begins. The change is gradual, almost invisible, unfolding at a pace that feels perfectly suited for rest. If you follow this idea a little further, you begin to notice it within your own body. Cells are constantly renewing. Old ones are replaced. Energy is taken in, used, and released again. Even as you rest, even as you drift closer to sleep, countless small processes continue, each one part of a larger rhythm that keeps everything in motion. You do not have to control it. It simply happens. Breathing follows the same gentle pattern, in and out. Each breath a small cycle of exchange. Oxygen enters, carbon dioxide leaves, and the process repeats without effort. It is steady, reliable, and deeply connected to the same natural principles that guide forests, rivers, and entire ecosystems. There is something comforting in that. The realization that you are not separate from these cycles, but part of them, moving within them, just as everything else does. Even time itself feels different when you think this way. Instead of rushing forward, it begins to feel more like a slow turning. Day becomes night, night becomes day. Seasons shift, return, and shift again. Patterns repeat, but never in exactly the same way. There's variation, but also continuity. That balance is what keeps everything alive. Too much change, and systems collapse. Too little change, and nothing grows. But within this steady rhythm, life finds its way forward again and again. It simply goes on. And perhaps that is why it can feel so calming to reflect on it. There is no need to hurry the process, no need to force anything into place. The world has been moving in these patterns long before we noticed them, and it will continue long after. For now, all you need to do is follow the feeling of that rhythm. Let your thoughts slow down, just as the cycle slows into night. Let each idea drift in and out, like waves reaching the shore and then gently pulling back again. Nothing needs to stay. Nothing needs to be held onto. Like leaves returning to the soil, thoughts can settle, soften, and fade when they're ready. And as they do, something else takes their place. A quieter space, a softer awareness, a sense that everything is continuing exactly as it should. Far beneath the surface of the soil, where no light reaches, another quiet world is at work. Threads of fungi stretch through the darkness, connecting roots to roots, tree to tree, forming vast underground networks that share nutrients, signals, and support. Nothing in nature truly grows alone. A tree that stands tall above the ground is, in many ways, supported by countless unseen relationships below it. Sugars produced in sunlight travel downward into the roots. In return, minerals gathered from deep in the soil rise upward, feeding leaves, branches, and new growth. It is a constant exchange, a silent conversation that never needs words. And just like that, the idea of independence begins to soften. Everything is connected, not in an obvious or overwhelming way, but in a quiet, dependable rhythm that holds systems together. Even the smallest organisms play their part. Bacteria break down what is no longer living. Insects carry material from one place to another. Wind spreads seeds across wide distances. Water shapes landscapes, slowly carving paths that guide life in new directions. Each action is small on its own, but together they create something vast and continuous. It simply goes on. If you shift your attention to the oceans, the pattern continues there too. Near the surface, sunlight feeds microscopic life. Tiny drifting organisms, almost invisible to the eye, capture energy and begin the process that supports entire marine ecosystems. Small creatures feed on them. Larger creatures feed on the small ones. And step by step, the chain extends upward. Then slowly, it returns downward again. When life ends in the ocean, it does not vanish. It sinks, gently, steadily, into the depths below. There, in the cold and quiet darkness, it becomes food once more, sustaining creatures that never see the light. Even in the deepest places, the cycle continues. There is no emptiness, only transformation. And the pace remains unhurried. Nothing rushes, nothing forces its way forward. Each stage unfolds exactly when it needs to, guided by conditions, balance, and time. That same sense of timing exists everywhere. Seeds do not rush to grow. They wait, sometimes for days, sometimes for years, until the right moment arrives, the right temperature, the right amount of moisture, the right balance of light and darkness. Then, without hesitation, they begin. A small root pushes downward, a shoot reaches upward, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, new life takes shape. It is patient. It simply goes on. In a way, this patience is part of what makes the cycle so steady. There is no pressure to be anything other than what each moment requires. No need to hurry toward the next stage before the current one is complete. Everything unfolds in its own time. And as you continue to listen, you might begin to notice that same gentle timing within yourself. Your breathing, steady and even. Your body gradually relaxing, your thoughts becoming less crowded, less urgent. There's nothing you need to solve right now. nothing you need to finish. Just like the natural world, you are allowed to move at a slower pace, to rest within the moment, to let things continue without effort. It simply goes on. And as it does, the edges of awareness can begin to soften. Details fade slightly into the background. The need to focus becomes less important. Instead, there's just a gentle flow from one thought to the next, each one lighter than the last, like clouds drifting across a quiet sky, appearing, changing, then slowly disappearing again. No resistance, no interruption, just movement. Even sleep itself follows this pattern. It does not arrive suddenly or forcefully. It approaches gradually, like night settling over a landscape. Light fades, sounds soften, and the world becomes quieter, calmer, more still. Until, without noticing the exact moment, you drift into it. And while you rest, the cycles continue. Your body repairs, your mind processes. Energy is restored. All without effort, all without awareness, because it simply goes on. High above the ground, where branches stretch into open air, another quiet process unfolds. Leaves turn gently toward the light, capturing energy without sound, without effort. Sunlight touches their surface, and within that contact, something extraordinary begins. Light becomes life. Through delicate chemistry, invisible to the eye, energy is stored, transformed, and shared. What begins as sunlight becomes growth, structure, and movement. It becomes wood, bark, fruit, and seed. It becomes shelter, nourishment, and continuation. All from something as simple as light meeting a leaf. And yet, even this is not a single moment. It is part of a longer chain. The energy held within the plant moves outward. It feeds animals, it supports ecosystems, it returns again to the soil, and slowly, quietly, it begins again. It simply goes on. If you imagine a forest over time, not just in a single moment, but across years, decades, even centuries, the pattern becomes even more gentle and continuous. Young trees rise, while older ones slowly fade. Open spaces appear where light reaches the ground again. New growth fills what once seemed empty. Nothing is permanent, but nothing is truly lost either. Everything shifts, everything continues. And there is a calmness in that idea. A sense that change does not have to feel sudden or overwhelming. It can be slow, gradual, almost unnoticeable. They follow patterns just as steady as the rising and setting of the sun. Nothing rushed, nothing forced, only a rhythm that has always existed. It simply goes on. As time passes, the first signs of morning begin to gather, almost unnoticed at first. A slight shift in the sky, a gradual change in the air. Darkness begins to loosen its hold, not all at once, but gently, like a curtain slowly lifting. Light returns, and with it, another cycle begins. Birds stir, leaves catch the early glow. The world awakens, not suddenly, but gradually, as if it too is easing itself back into motion. This is how nature moves, not in sharp transitions, but in soft changes. One moment blending into the next, one state flowing into another. Just like wakefulness drifting into sleep, and sleep drifting back into wakefulness again. It simply goes on. If you follow this rhythm closely, you begin to notice something reassuring. There is no moment where everything must happen, no single point where all things depend on urgency. Instead, life spreads itself across time, allowing each process to unfold in its own space. That is why it feels so steady, so reliable, so calm. Even the largest changes begin with something small, a seed opening, a drop of water falling, a single breath, and from that, everything else follows. Slowly, naturally, without effort, it simply goes on. And as you rest here listening, you may begin to feel more in tune with that same gentle pace. Your body no longer needs to stay alert. Your mind no longer needs to stay busy. There is nothing to chase, nothing to figure out, only the quiet continuation of everything as it is. Your breathing, slow and even. Your muscles, soft and at ease. Your thoughts, drifting further apart like distant echoes fading into silence. And in that growing quiet, rest begins to deepen, not suddenly, but gradually, like night settling across a landscape. It simply